Pre-poop. So, let's start where it all began. Resident Evil 1. With, Michelle Rodriguez, Colin Salmon, the guy from A Knight's Tale, whose name completely escapes me at the moment. I think Resident Evil 1 goes right up here. I think this is one of the better movies, considering the pantheon of where Resident Evil non-game related media has gone. Does it have anything to do with Resident Evil? No. It's pretty decisively not Resident Evil. I mean, it has zombies in it, but for the amount of characters or plot lines from the games, for as much as of those that should be in there that isn't, it's still got the spirit of it, I suppose, because it's very survival. They have limited resources. They're trying to improvise with what they've got. They're making up plans as they go. Yeah, honestly, and that one scene when Mila Jovovich's character realizes there's a cure, that is honestly shot just like a PS1 survival horror game. Like, if you redo that scene, but with like Bloodborne PSX style, right? Like, if you were to put shitty character models in all the same places, all the same angles, and some like low grade music, that is perfectly like, mwah. It's very in keeping with the spirit. And then, it's not perfect. Then you get to the Marilyn Manson esque score that sounds like rock music, and that never works well. Some of the acting is not great. And it acts like it has big reveals, but they're really not. And the CGI is especially not great. The liquor looks good when it's a prosthetic, but the CGI always looks bad. Sorry. But it's a fun movie. It's a fun movie, and it's quaint. Considering where the series goes, even though they include characters that we know from the games, considering the quality of those characters, I would much rather have something that is spiritually the same as the games, but is more focused and smaller scale, and rather than having something big and bombastic and over the top. And then you have Resident Evil 2, the sequel that followed it. And this movie, Resident Evil Apocalypse, that was the subtitle. All these, even in the CG ones too, all of these subtitles are terrible. I hate all of the subtitles for all of the Resident Evil media. They're so stupid. Resident Evil Apocalypse. I think it's a step down, but it's not a big step down. It didn't completely fall off the hinges, but I do think that it's more towards like what a Hollywood sequel, right? It's what you would think a Hollywood sequel would be. It's really fucking stupid. That's my main issue, is that the first one was very silly. Not silly. It's very small scale. Resident Evil 2 definitely tries to be bigger scale by introducing like a ton of new characters all at once, doing stupid things. And I'm all for action movies being over the top, but they go really far with Apocalypse. And I know how that sounds, because all of the live action Resident Evil movies are over the top. But the amount that they go from the first Resident Evil movie to Resident Evil 2, the biggest like whoa, like over the top action moment in the first Resident Evil is Mila Jovovich running alongside a wall and kicking a dog out of the air. That's it. That's the most like over the top bombastic action moment in the first Resident Evil movie. Then you go from that to running down the side of a building propelled on a wire to, like, have a 3-on-1 combat scene with nightsticks. And cut in such a way that I'm like, I can't tell what's happening. They have a Mortal Kombat style face-off at the end of the movie. This movie is bonkers. Now you could argue that that's its best quality, is that it goes all in, it's completely over the top, there's no shame, there's no abandon, and that you have to respect that. And that's why I don't put it in any of these two. I don't think it's like a miserable 6. I think it's stupid, but it's not a miserable movie. We might reevaluate this later, but I think that it tried. It didn't try to be Resident Evil, but I think that it tried to just be fun, right? Now, Resident Evil Extinction is where things start to kind of fall by the wayside. This is where things start going too far even for Resident Evil Apocalypse, because now we have a completely different setting that completely negates all of the events of the last 2 movies. It's like, well, why didn't we just start here? Because supposedly... supposedly, the entire world's... like, everything's dried up. Right? All the different ecosystems of the world have dried out. And there's little to no life anywhere. And human beings are barely surviving. And it's got like a Day of the Dead kind of feel to it. Because they wanted a desert setting. And they obviously, like, at least with the first 3, they had a very distinct idea that each one was going to have its own identity. And it's true, at least that's my theory, because out of all the live-action Resident Evil, Mila Jovovich, the Mila Jovovich saga of Resident Evil, the first 3 each have a very distinct feel and look. And I remember all of the events of the first 3. It's once you get into the other ones where they're all just gray all the time that it's harder for me to distinguish anything from any of them. Resident Evil Extinction. Hang on, is this music too loud? Or is it too quiet? I want you guys to hear it. Yay, I love this song. Oh, this takes me back. I'll turn up just a little bit. Resident Evil Extinction is probably right about here. Because it really is exactly what you would think a video game movie is going to be, which is completely nonsensical from scene to scene. At least Apocalypse has a through line from beginning to end, and they constructed scenes in a way that would take you from one to the next. Resident Evil Extinction feels like they were just making things up kind of as they went along, and then they forgot what they were doing in the latter half of the movie. And I remember, I still feel this way years later. I saw this in theaters, and my best friend, my little sister, and her boyfriend at the time, we all went to see it, and they were just in love with it. They were like, oh man, that was so cool. The birds and the fire and the whatever. And I was the only one in our circle who was like, I think it's kind of stupid that she has psychic powers now, because now it's not like cool, it's not exciting anymore. She can just solve all problems with psychic powers. And they're like, Caleb, you're overthinking it. And here we are years later, and no one likes this movie. And every single one of them, all 3 of them were like, yeah, this movie's not great. I know. I was telling you that when we saw it in theaters. Like, good... Why is it just doing them... Okay, it is going random. That was weird. So, Resident Evil Extinction... It even with Lyndon Ashby in it... I mean, they kill Lyndon Ashby. They kill Oded Fair. They kill all of the side characters that we could have possibly liked, and they also introduced Kmart. So that immediately docks it down from the mid-tier down to the higher low tier. Resident Evil Degeneration. Now we're getting into the CGI shit. Oh, hang on. All right. Sorry. Bless me. Now we're getting into the Japanese-made CGI movies. And when this first came out, it was such a breath of fresh air. It was so nice to get something different from the Paul W.S. Anderson action fests that we were getting with the what's that company called? I forget. The movie studio that produces these. Sony. From the Sony movies. So it was nice to see something different. And because they were CGI, it looked enough like the games that I think Resident Evil fans were more susceptible to being accepting of the CGI movies, right? But when you really look at Degeneration, it's fucking boring. It is so fucking slow and boring. It takes so long for anything of consequence to happen in Degeneration. And when things do start to happen, it is better, it is exciting. And this is also where they really solidified, like, Leon's a superhuman being. I'm like, no, he's cool, but he shouldn't be a, like, he shouldn't be fucking Solid Snake. So, honestly, yeah. I actually think it's worse than Resident Evil Extinction. Resident Evil Extinction is frustrating to watch, and not a lot of it makes sense, but it's got entertainment as a priority. Degeneration is too concerned with being different and like trying something new, which I appreciate. Normally I would be all for like innovation and trying something different, but it's not intriguing. It's not fun to watch. And Resident Evil Extinction at a certain point stops being fun to watch and is just annoying, but at least it's fun for a little bit of its runtime. And then you have Resident Evil Afterlife, and I'm just going to immediately just throw that into the absolute bottom tier. Resident Evil Afterlife is one of the worst goddamn movies I've ever seen in my fucking life. It's so boring and stupid. It somehow managed to merge the boring qualities of Degeneration and merge it with the stupid moments of Extinction. And the worst part is that I think is they tried to sell you on it like it's a really big deal. All of its big moments, they really try to convince you that every moment is an epic moment. But they're all so empty and hollow, and because they're not built up to. Nothing in them ever has any kind of lead up to anything happening. Because they're not interested in the lead up. They don't know how to create lead up. They don't know how to create build, or to build breadcrumbs, or to have characters. And I don't need big, elaborate Lost style plots. I don't need to have really in-depth three-dimensional characters. I just need a character to have one quality that I can discern about them. That's it. I just need something. But the movie still doesn't even have that. And the fucking quarter shit with the shotguns is... See, that's one of those things too. As the movies go along, they get worse and worse about this, where the Resident Evil movies think that you are stupid. They think you're a fucking idiot and will just accept anything that you're told. But if you're watching with even an iota of an IQ point, you're sitting there like, I know that doesn't work. You're lying to me. I know that doesn't work. You're fucking lying. And the final fight at the end with Wesker, I've had, every time this comes up, Resident Evil fans go, but they recreated it from the game. They just redid the choreography. So if you don't like that, then you don't like the game. No, that's not what that means. That is not. That's one of the stupidest like defenses I've ever heard in my life. Just because you don't like how something is reinterpreted doesn't mean that you automatically don't like the original material. It works better in the original material because the camera is free to move however it wants. It's free to move at the speed it wants, and because they're CGI creations, they're character models, not real people, your suspension of disbelief is much more flexible that way. It's much more willing to accept over-the-top shit. When you do it in live action, the human eye will be subconsciously looking for fakeness. It will notice when shit doesn't work. And you know what Afterlife doesn't have? The budget to pull that off. From the instant that not Chris Redfield pulls out his gun and he shoots at Wesker, and Wesker does his little like dodge thing, immediately like, this is not working. You mean to tell me, I'm getting worked up now. We're gonna figure this shit out. Thank you, Block A Boots, for letting us rip into Resident Evil for a minute. So you mean to tell me that this effect looks good to you? That you mean to tell me that this... Let's look at that again. Oh God, I wasn't fast enough. Look at this. Come on. Like, so you notice that not working because it's a real person, right? You can tell that it's just a guy standing in one spot, and they told him, "Hey, what do you do your best Neo impression of dodging bullets in the Matrix, but we don't have a suspension to let you lean back, so just do the best you can, right?" It's like this shitty particle effect over him. And then they literally, with my editing program, they just like make a fade out. They drag that shit over and just have him fade from that spot and they have him move over here. I can pull this off. This is editing I can pull off. And I'm not saying I'm better. I'm just saying that they have more money and time than I do, and I'm not getting paid for shit. So you compare that, right? Resident Evil 5, Wesker fight. There we go. No, whoever captured this did not do a very good job. He puts the glasses on. Shoot. Woof, woof. See how much better that looks? That looks so, like, way better. And part of it is because it's already a cartoon. Your brain will accept the fact that someone is doing something inhuman if they already look inhuman. Also, you'll notice... Hang on, this is really loud. There we go. This music's actually kind of fitting. You'll notice, too, in this one... Oh, I went too far back, sorry. You'll notice... So he shoots, and what do you cut to? It's a completely flat angle. It's easily like 40 feet away, 50 feet away, and he's off center against a completely white background, because that makes it easier to key him in. And the camera just stays completely still as you watch him do all his Matrix shit. So on top of the effect not looking good, the camera is also so far away that me as an audience member cannot get engaged. I don't feel like I'm in the fight. At least with this part... Whoops, did I hit mini player? I always do that. At least with the lead up to it, this part, the camera is moving. Now, granted, it's still edited like shit, because when he throws her, it cuts way too soon. Bam. She didn't even complete the fall, and it already cut. But at least the camera is moving around and trying to get you invested. But then he shoots. And again, now we're completely disconnected. Ooh, excuse me. Now we're completely disconnected again. We went from being like this to being up in the rafters. We're in the mezzanine seats now. Compare that to how we did it here. Let's actually go a little faster. So, Chris goes to shoot, fires off his rounds. Camera moves towards the action. And it's helped that the lead into that is Chris getting up and he moves towards Wesker. He's getting up and running. Then the camera starts to move towards Wesker. It's almost like they edited together a third person to a first person view. Then we go back to third person to watch the melee attack. Right? The camera is getting you invested in what's happening. This isn't doing anything. Like, yeah, he gets up, but he doesn't start moving towards Wesker. He's standing completely still, in the same spot. Then suddenly he's running. It doesn't help either that in this little fight here, things cut too quickly, or they didn't start soon enough. So, he gets pushed back. The clothes are still moving. Like, they did not complete that action. They almost like The Last Airbender. The Last Airbender was really guilty of cutting too soon on things. Right here, the clothes are still sliding back. He has not finished sliding all the way. And you don't have to wait you don't have to wait until everything is completely still again. But if I can tell it's a mid-action, also... then it feels incomplete. But also, we start on like him mid-smirk. That little like, haha, I didn't even feel that kind of look does not work if I don't see from point A to point B, right? Think of like 2D not 2D animation, claymation. They have multiple heads for different characters, or for the same character. I'm sorry, and you will see that they've made multiple heads just to transition from one face to another one. We need to see that complete. On here, it's like they started halfway through. He's already smirking once we cut to his face again. All he does is turn his head. And then he raises up, and then he knees. See, that's the other thing too. I just now realized that he's supposed to be kneeing him in the stomach. But it doesn't look that way in full motion. It looks like he's like Chris is struggling. It doesn't look like he's supposed to be hitting him. Bam. I also don't think you needed 3 cuts just to raise up the elbow for the hit. I think you could have just done... So look, there's 1, 2, 3. You didn't need 3. You could have gotten away with just 2. It's a little too much. Now, again, you go back to the game, and he goes... it cuts to a shot of the knee going into Chris's gut. So you can immediately tell what's happening. Knee, or elbow. And they also do the elbow in one shot. You get one shot for each. They're just a little longer. 1, 2, and lead into the throw. Resident Evil Afterlife sucks. Moving on. Yeah, this is fine. Now we have Resident Evil Inc.'s Retribution? Which is when I think we all universally agreed that Retribution was when they started running out of ideas. I am of the opinion they ran out of ideas long before this. But Retribution was the one where she once again starts out in the red hive, red queen, whatever. And there's clones of her running around. But then they get rid of the clones, like, immediately. And then you start seeing, like, lush, open vistas, all these trees, all this water. And you're like, I'm sorry, I thought the world dried up in Resident Evil Extinction. The world just got better. You know, that takes, like, the destruction of that would take decades. It would not just happen fucking just overnight. But now you're telling me that it all just came back, all within this girl's lifespan. It seems like it happened within like a week or so. Technically, on every level, Retribution is worse than Afterlife. I hate Afterlife more, but Retribution is ruined more game characters. They keep bringing in character. I've kind of passed this in talking about these movies up until now, but ever since Apocalypse, the Paul W.S. Anderson Resident Evil movies have an obsession with bringing in characters from the game for no reason and then shitting on them up and down. And then, like, smearing it all over. Every single interpretation is like... Oh, Bayonetta, nice. I was just curious what you guys were listening to. Every single game interpretation or movie interpretation of the game characters feels like B-tier quality cosplay. I've legitimately seen great interpretations of these characters on Instagram and on TikTok, and they have maybe a tenth of the budget that these movies have, and yet somehow they're able to pull it off so much better because they have talent, they have creativity, and they have passion. All those things add up to the characters being more fully realized. Now, is it all in the visuals? No, absolutely not. The writing is also a factor. And that's where these characters should probably shine. But because they're too busy making way for Mila Jovovich's character and her plotline that we've never cared about, not to this extent, they just end up getting sidelined. They're only there to make her look good. Now, if they had done something where it became more of an ensemble cast, and Mila Jovovich's character ends up, we follow her more, but if it turned out that we had, more investment in her, but it's about everyone collectively together trying to fight Umbrella and get through all of this, then that could have turned out more interesting. Also, speaking of Umbrella in these movies is a non-existence. They are one of the worst like, I want to take over the world corporation plot points I've ever seen in anything. And I'd say that with no exaggeration. Because they don't feel like they're actually pushing events of the story forward. They don't feel like they're motivating anything in anyone's character arc. They only become a presence in the story when the story needs something to be pushed forward that only the evil company could do, right? It's just an excuse. Then you have Resident Evil Damnation. And Damnation is better than doing your taxes. It's still not a great time, but they managed to fix the boredom of degeneration and still keep the action qualities to it. Does it make any sense? Especially in the in the Resident Evil timeline that they were creating with the CGI movies? No, I don't even think that they watched their own last movie, but it's certainly a better attempt. And see, even with this, none of these turn out great, because then you have that whole fucking scene where the guy controlling liquors is fighting a Mr. X tyrant, and there's a tank involved, and you're like, this is getting kind of silly. But at least it's at the end where things should be over the top. And now, Resident Evil, the final chapter, which so far has been staying true to its word, and I kind of need it to continue to do that. I mean, it's fucking stupid too. In fact, it kind of undoes, it retcons a lot of stuff, and there's a huge plot point or a plot hole with bringing back the Red Queen fucking again because they have no other ideas in the series. And she's like, oh, there's an antidote, don't worry. Yeah, there was always an antidote, but I need you to go and disperse it into the air with this like fucking mortar or whatever. And like that was just always a thing, huh? You had to wait until the world was completely destroyed to bring this up. And they bring back the whole like desert quality, the from Resident Evil Extinction. They try to do the desert thing again, but it's just it's so loud, it's so stupid, and it really does just feel like what's that word game? Mad Libs. It feels like they're playing Mad Libs, but with Resident Evil, and then they just turn that into a script. The part that frustrated me a lot too was when they just keep insisting that Wesker is a villain, and they do that fucking shit too with I forget the actor's name. He's really good, but he's from Game of Thrones. And he's playing, I think, Spencer? No, he's not Spencer. Anyway, you know the character I'm talking about. They try to do the whole fucking stupid thing of like, oh, I can predict your every move, so that makes me the ultimate whatever. And you are taking plot points from the Dead or Alive live action movie and trying to make it serious. At least the Dead or Alive movie knows that it's cheesy and stupid and complete trash. They know. That movie understood the assignment. I can accept that more. The Resident Evil movies try so hard to be for real. And they try to hold legit suspense that it's undercut by all of the ridiculousness. And that's why the games succeed. The games succeed at being both because it's a video game. Again, I keep harping on this, and I'm sorry, but the fact that they're fake people, they're character models, means they can get away with more. So that begs the question then, where does Resident Evil, the final chapter, go? What do we do with Resident Evil, the final chapter? I gotta think about this. This is tough. My instinct is to put it here, right in between Afterlife and Retribution. Do I like this? Do I like this more? Yeah, I like this. This is good. Out of these three, the final chapter is the best of them, but they're all still like absolute shit tier. Resident Evil Vendetta is probably the worst out of this tier. At the very least, it is the best looking out of all the CG movies. Degeneration, you could tell they were wanting to do more realistic character models, but they didn't. It felt like they didn't have the budget for it. Damnation, more detail, but basically more of the same. And then you have Vendetta. Also, Damnation has a lot of daytime scenes, and that you can hide imperfections with your character in the dark a little more. Vendetta definitely is a step up in the visual department, for sure. I fucking hate that stupid ass John Wick fight scene where everyone is like, oh my god, it's the greatest thing ever. No, it's not. You're wrong. I'm sorry. It doesn't belong in Resident Evil. And even outside of the fact, if you changed the name, and if you just called it Zombie Fight, right? Call it Zombie Fight Vendetta. Take out Resident Evil, just call it Zombie Fight for now. It is so lazy because they are so obviously just trying to ape in on the John Wick popularity that it doesn't come off as creative or cool. It comes off like what's the term? They're cashing in. They are cashing in, and it's so blatant and obvious. And the fact that people go nuts for it is a little depressing because it's just proof that you can sell people on anything as long as it's like the thing that they like or what's popular at the time. And the sad thing is that it works. It works. Copying other people's homework works. Clearly, because people like those scenes in this movie. And then the whole like, oh, they're shooting at the ground. It's so laughable that it's funny. No, it's stupid. These are characters that are supposed to be smart, and yet they're shooting at the ground like fucking kids with laser tag guns. Like, you can't tell me that the movie is trying to build suspense and be effective in that suspense when that kind of shit is happening. It's one or the other. And then I'm gonna be honest, I have to leave this one out. The Netflix CGI show, because I actually never watched it. I'm told that it starts out good and then gets shittier as it goes on, and I'm willing to believe that. But since I honestly haven't given it a watch, I can't in good conscience put it anywhere on this list. Besides, I want to talk about these ones the most. Resident Evil Welcome to Raccoon City is honest to God worse than... Oh, did I do this backwards? No, I did do this backwards. Oh shit. Okay, so hang on. I forgot. The best of them goes towards the top, the front. Ooh, I messed these up bad. Okay. Resident Evil Welcome to Raccoon City is the first time out of all of the Resident Evil media that I've watched, Welcome to Raccoon City was one of the first times that made me really think, do I like Resident Evil? Is this the shit that I like? Because if it is, I'm out. And it's partially because of the quality of the movie. It's honestly a fan-made movie. It is a fan-made movie with a fan movie budget. And I'm not shitting on fan-made movies because... Ow! That hurt. I've seen a lot of really good fan-made films, but the thing is that they stay where they belong, on the internet. That's where they belong. Resident Evil Welcome to Raccoon City. I don't know who fucked who or who sucked whose dick to get this thing into theaters. It doesn't belong in theaters. It doesn't even really belong on like straight to video, because that would imply paying. You should not have to pay to watch Welcome to Raccoon City. They should be begging you to give up your time to watch this piece of shit. And people defend it as like, oh, well, at least it's got Leon and Claire. And that's the other thing that makes me wonder if this franchise has left me by, because some of the fucking fans, some of you guys are really insufferable. Not all of you. Not all of you, especially lately. Like with the remakes coming out, a lot of you are much better. It's much more fun to talk with Resident Evil fans now. But you used to have to be really careful, because they'd be really up their own ass about the, like, fixed camera angles and, like, you have to play it a certain way. You don't. The fact that all it takes for a piece of shit like this movie to be accepted by the fan base is to include, like, oh, there's Leon. He looks like Leon. Let's do it. But it's not Leon. They honestly did him dirtier in this than in the Mila Jovovich movies. They're both bad, but his character qualities are completely... Oh, okay. I'm just making sure. I'm sick of this. And then there were the people that were racist and terrible and coming out and saying that you can't have XYZ characters played by XYZ race when you absolutely can. There is nothing about any Resident Evil character. I'm only going to say this once. Live. There is nothing about any Resident Evil main character, main protagonist, that is tied to their race. It is not inherent to their character that they have to be played by that race. I know people are going to be like, well, what about Sheva? Sheva's not a protagonist. If she comes back later as a protagonist, I will amend that statement. But Leon, Claire, Jill, Wesker, they say Chris, none of them have to be played by white people. And the movie, like, has... Oh my god, I'm getting mad just thinking about it. Because there's so many moments where I'm like, this movie isn't finished. They weren't done with the effects in this movie. But they were just... Either they had no time and had to release it anyway, or they thought that it was good looking. Which is depressing. And then, honestly, the Resident Evil show... It's also a no for me. But the question is it better or worse than Welcome to Raccoon City? I'm not going to say it's better. I'm going to say it's not as bad as Welcome to Raccoon City. With the exception of Wesker, you can ignore a lot of the events in the Resident Evil Netflix series and just call it something else. You can call it Zombie Fight. A Netflix series presents Zombie Fight. And it would still work just as well. Welcome to Raccoon City is worse because you can't do that. It insists that this is the movie interpretation of the game. It is insisting that these are the same characters. It is telling you, hey, you know that Resident Evil thing, right? You never played the games? Well, don't worry. We got you covered. We brought the characters from the game to the screen. They're the same thing. And it because it does that disservice to one of the greatest game franchises in existence, I think that makes it worse. The damage it does when its job is to bring these characters, bring this franchise to an audience that otherwise would have no idea, and to do it well. Not correctly, but to do it well. I think that makes it worse than the Netflix Resident Evil series. Because let's say someone watched the Netflix Resident Evil series. Let's say this person has really bad taste and they liked the Resident Evil series, okay? Just roll with me on this. I know that's outlandish. I know that's over the top. But just bear with me for a second and let's pretend that this person exists. Let's call him Joe Popcorn. Let's say Joe Popcorn sits down to watch the Netflix Resident Evil series and they really like it. And they go, oh, cool. I'll go check out the games. They're going to find something better. They're going to experience something better. Is it the same as the show? No. But the show doesn't ruin, with the exception of Wesker, doesn't ruin any of the other characters. Welcome to Raccoon City ruins all of the characters, the tone, the story, every single element, and brings it down, like, brings it back by like 20 years worth of quality. This is an Uwe Boll movie that somehow escaped time paradoxes to get released in 2021, I want to say. I think it's 2 years old. And there you have it. Our Resident Evil tier list. Our definitive, objective, fact-based Resident Evil tier list. No, this is just my opinion. This is how I feel about these movies. The majority of them are absolute shit shows. I'm still waiting for the day when we get something Resident Evil related that's of decent quality that's not a game. It would be nice. But I'm not exactly going to hold my breath either. It's rough going as a Resident Evil fan.